first question is, with the huge number of hadith, customs and schools of law which developed over the years since the Quran was revealed, which governs the Muslims today? Daily conduct more, the word of God, or the law, or the laid down interpretation of men long after?
I think this question is perhaps confused in itself. There is no clear direction of the question which I could follow. The fact is that everyone who believes in a faith believes in that faith as to be followed. And it is his understanding of the faith which will dictate what he should do. Now, of course, religions get split into many sects with the passage of time, and this is not only the monopoly of Islam as such. Every religion on earth got split into 2, 3, 4, and many hundreds later on. So those who follow that faith follow it from a particular vantage point. They see that faith from their own angle of vision, and what they see, it is binding on them to follow that. So although Islam is also split into many sects, those who follow those sects, they understand Islam in a certain way, and their understanding of Islam is molded not only by the Quran alone, but the understanding of the Quran by the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as related by many narrators, and as understood again by many earlier scholars of Islam. So there are many valves involved in this passage of remittance of messages, with the result that many Muslims today do not have a direct access either to the Quran or to the traditions of the Holy Prophet to make their own understanding of Islam. They generally follow some scholars who have reached a conclusion in the same processes as I have described. So most of the Muslims today follow some scholars without realizing what they believe in is, whether it is genuinely the message of the Quran or generally the message or the conduct of the Holy Prophet or not. And the same applies, I think, generally to all religions. So the only answer to this question could be that those who understand a religion in any way, right or wrong, as long as they believe in that to be the truth, they should act upon it. Next question, please. You said you have quite a few.
I thought that, well, I gave out more than one piece of paper. Only one has been returned.
Now they may ask that.
Right, right.
I did come to Islamabad last year, and I made comment about the image that the media portrayed of Muslims. And when I look since then at the image that's portrayed, thank you, that's very good of you, is that Christian religion in this country is portrayed as being quite open and considerate, charitable and caring, but the Muslim faith is shown to be fairly dangerous and a destabilizing influence, certainly in parts of the world. Do you think that's a fair comparison?
You see, unfortunately, the religion is being politicized over much these days, and the interest of the media in any religion is mostly dictated by the political interests influencing that media. This is so obvious from the past 1 year's media behavior in the Western countries. Islam has been portrayed as a faith of sword, coercion, non-tolerance, and even terrorism. And yet at the same time, there were 10 Muslim countries siding with America who, as if they didn't belong to Islam, there were exceptions were made in their case. Criticism was not directed against them, but only against the opponents of a certain bloc who did not agree with their viewpoint. So I don't want to go into the detail of the right and wrong, which side possessed or monopolized or shared right or wrong. What I have to say only this much, that the media image of Islam during this critical period has been totally one-sided and very unfair. In fact, the image of a faith must never be related to the behavior and conduct of a people belonging to that faith, because with the passage of time, people go through various phases in their history. Belonging to the same religion, their conduct continues to change. And sometimes there is such a revolutionary change in their attitudes that it's impossible for one to attribute the same behavior at one phase of history to the same religion as well as the other behavior at another phase of the history. For instance, in application to the history of Christianity, you can understand it much better when you conceive Christianity at the time of Jesus Christ, how it unfolded itself, and then turn to in comparatively recent past of Inquisition in Spain and the witch hunting in England and putting innocent ladies to stake to the number of sometimes 5,000 in one regime. Now, are these two behaviors Christian behaviors? Which one is and which one is not? And then during the Nazi war, the Second World War, I mean, Christian powers were pitched against Christian powers. Which one was the Christian behavior? Look at the Iranian understanding of Islam as against Saudian understanding of Islam, and their respective understanding led to their respective behaviors. Also, the Libyan understanding of Islam and the Syrian understanding of Islam, they differ diametrically. So, which Islam is, which behavior is authentic, leading to the better or correct understanding of Islam? These are the questions which one has to raise before trying to relate religion with the behavior and conduct of a certain people at a certain stage of history. So this is an absolutely futile and childish effort, yet it is being done by very mature people, by very powerful governments. The ultimate inference one can safely draw is that all that is happening here is just a display of falsehood in the name of truth. Those who do these things, they know they are wrong. They know they are exploiting situations. Yet, unfortunately, the public opinion is so simple and so naive that always it is led and is influenced by this powerful media of the modern times. If you want really to understand Islam, you should understand it from the sources. By sources, I do not just mean the book or the traditions as related to us by way of advices from the Holy Prophet of Allah, but study the early history, the history of the time of the holy founder of Islam himself. Only then you can understand Islam being displayed correctly. And that is the only authentic source which you should rely upon. Otherwise, the rest is just confusion. Thank you. Please. Yes, please. क्या है? खट्टा? Hot water or kahwa, that's all.
Another written question. And a short introduction. It is with extreme pleasure that I am again in your presence. The first time was in Chino, California. And the question is, I'm wondering why there are not more women visible in the endeavor to attract more people to Ahmadiyya
More women?
This may be the #1 criticism in the United States.
I just couldn't follow. Would you kindly repeat it, please?
Again, it says, I am wondering why there are not more women visible in the endeavor to attract more people to Ahmadiyyat.
Well, if more women will be visible, more people will be attracted to women, not to Islam or Ahmadiyyat. That is my general finding with my experience of life. I think this is true. It's not just a joke. Yes, please. You want to ask a question?
I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes. Would you kindly go to the microphone? If you take the trouble of going to the microphone, please.
During the recent war in Iraq, in the United States, most of the reports from Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, emphasized the fact that Muslim women were sort of kept in the background, so to speak. American women who were in the armed forces were asked not to drive vehicles because that was forbidden in Saudi Arabia. The way the news was presented, it had almost an adverse effect on at least the females in the United States.
Yes, I understand this. Please now, I'll answer this question. That was also a part of the propaganda, an organized propaganda carried out against Islam. The fact is that Saudian attitude to Islam is a very bigoted and narrow-minded attitude. To understand Islam from Saudi behavior is not right. It's not wise, I should say. Because even if you try to understand Islam from the reflective mirrors of people's conduct, you should have a broader view before you and have an opportunity of comparing one conduct against the other. Because all conducts of the Muslims are understood to be reflecting their understanding of Islam. That is what I'm saying is understood to be. But that again is not right. Many parts of the Muslim behavior, many areas of Muslim behavior are not related to Islam at all. They are either related to the local customs or related to the Western culture. So Islam is neither here nor there. So that is why I warned you in the beginning that if you want to genuinely to understand the message of Islam, read it from the sources, that is the Quran and the traditions of the Holy Founder of Islam, yourself, not through the wells of Muslim medieval scholars, because that would be a very dangerous game, because according to my study, the medieval Muslim scholars were themselves influenced by the political situations of their time. So they should not be accepted without a pinch of salt. They should be, instead of reaching Islam through them, why not study the same sources which they studied and make your own conclusions? So I always find it a safer attitude not only to directly read the Quran and interpret it according to my own understanding and wisdom, whatever God has given me, but also to study the early history of Islam during the period of the Holy Founder of Islam. If there women are treated like they are treated in Saudi Arabia today, then Saudi behavior would be Islamic. If women had a completely different role to play in his period, then of course Saudi behavior would not be Islamic. So as I understand, in those days, women even took part in war, not only in tending after the injured and the dying, but also they took up weapons. There are Muslim women who are known to be great warriors, who actually participated in the wars, like Khawla, for instance. She has become a legendary figure. And like at one stage, I can quote just one instance of history. Some Muslim, I don't say well the entire Muslim army or a part thereof, was put to flight because of a sudden rush of the enemy, which was so powerful that they were actually put to flight. Ladies were behind in the camps, ready for tending the wounded and so on and so forth. They took up the cudgel in their hands and addressing these men, they said, look here, your situation, they didn't say the same thing, but in effect they said, your situation is between the devil and the deep blue sea. Either you fight the enemy or you fight us. And having done with you, then we will go ahead and fight the enemy. This was the Muslim spirit displayed in women's character at that time. So instead of reading or trying to read Islamic way of life regarding ladies, regarding women, through some Muslim countries' behavior like Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Indonesia, etc., we should go direct to the sources. And here again, you will find yourself in such confusion. In Indonesia, the understanding of Islamic behavior is absolutely different from that of Pakistan and that of Saudi Arabia. In Syria, it is different. In Lebanon, it is different. So, which would be Islam? So, this is my request to you. If you are really interested, you should always try to understand a faith from the sources, not from the propaganda carried out today. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm not sure whether this is more a question or rather an observation. I've been studying Islam and the Ahmadi movement with Mr. Tahir Selby for some time now, and the general tone of questions so far have been about the public image and the attitude towards that image. It seems to me that this is a first-class opportunity while you're in London, because clearly you're not short of technology, for some public relations campaign to be instigated by the movement to perhaps tidy up one or two of these misunderstandings and perhaps present the face of Islam that you would like to put forward, rather than allow us just to watch many of the television programs and coverages from different parts of the world, which may misguide us and tempt potential converts in another direction. Can I have some views on that, please?
I think you should, if you specify your question, because your question applies to a very wide situation.
It does indeed.
And if I start answering this question in generality, I may take more than an hour or so.
Okay.
You better please specify one small area. We make our beginning from there.
Okay.
Yes.
In that case, the question really is, does the movement have a PR man? Would it be useful to have perhaps some professional people, either from inside the movement or from without, or invited in, to perhaps look at the image that you're transmitting to the world, and perhaps they might give some guidance as to how best to counteract the adverse publicity that we get from elsewhere in the world?
Yes, please, thank you. Do you mean the possibility of employing professional aid to put our image across the world according to the modern means of image projection?
I think so. Unless you can have people in your own ranks that would would deal with this task for you. I watched, it's a long question this now, isn't it? But I was watching the half-an-hour television programme that London Weekend Television made, which, as I understood when we were having a conversation not an hour ago, lots and lots of commentary and lots of conversation was actually cut from the programme. One of the first things, about 4 minutes into the programme, they flashed on the screen that the Ahmadi movement differs from other Muslim communities in that they think Jesus died in Kashmir. Nothing was done to explain it. It just flashed on the screen, and I suspect people may have read that and thought, oh, here we go again, you know. And that's the point I'm trying to hit, really. Without certain explanations, people could mistakenly pass on by.
Right.
Thank you.
You see, the difficulty is that it is not just a question of spending more time in explaining ourselves to the people. It is the question more of people finding more time to listen to us. So in that particular attitude, the television experts always decide to make the programs of such nature as short as possible. For instance, sometimes the experts came to me and interviewed me for hours. And the net result was that they presented what I tried to explain to them in hours, in 5 minutes, to the television viewers. Now, this is the problem. Now, when we have got videos of excellent quality, professional quality as well as household quality, dealing with all such possible subjects running into scores of hours, they are available and they can be made available to anyone who is interested. But again, as far as the media is concerned, that is no place for this. In fact, sometimes they create more misunderstandings by disposing a subject summarily than to help solve misunderstandings. So that is why in America, when I was approached by certain media, television, radio, etc., to appear for a very brief time, say 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I said, no, thank you very much. I'm better without it. But if you want to project me as I want to project myself, then of course I would be ready to cooperate, but not otherwise. Recently, I think it was a manager or proprietor of a private firm which specialized in media projection, came to me through some Ahmadi friends and offered his services, which were quite costly, but the image he built was very attractive. He said, I'm an expert and our firm has been dealing in this subject for a long time now. So if you can part with a few $100,000, we can make a beautiful program for you for half an hour or 1 hour, etc. So when I discussed the details with him, I knew it was just meaningless. He would not cater for what public needs. He would cater for what public demands. That is the media attitude, which is unfortunately is not informative, but creates confusion upon confusion. People who deal with this subject, first of all, they have to project themselves into the public's mind and say what they need, what they require, in what they will be interested. And if they are interested in ignorance, if they are interested in superstition, that is what it would be, because everything has been commercialized. So many a time I have spoken on these subjects in Europe, in my press conferences on such subjects which agitated the minds of the people. But the answer they needed from the Muslim point of view wanted to be was something more exhilarating and more explosive than a sane middle of the way answer, which would, instead of creating the image of Islam as a terrorist organization, as a vengeful organization, as an explosive organization, would tell them It's a very calm, sensible, middle-of-the-road religion which deals with the problem as a matter of fact, pragmatically and sensibly. Now, I have been saying these things, and none of them was quoted ever. They repeatedly wanted me to say something like Khomeini, something like Gaddafi, something like Saddam. If I had said that, I'll be flashed in large print. But because I don't believe in that, so I'm not needed in the media. These are the problems, which we are facing. But anyway, if any professional would like to help us project our image as we would like it to be projected, of course we'll cooperate and we'll get ready to spend some money, after consulting our pocket as much as we possibly can. If that is the answer you needed, this is my answer. Thank you. Yes, please.
Could I briefly ask you to explain to those of us here why you're persecuted in Pakistan?
Why we are persecuted? Yes, please. You see, this is a time-old question. I have as much responsibility to answer this question as you have, or a Jew has, or a Hindu has. All religions and all truths, whether they brought a new religion or a new understanding of the past religion, were always persecuted at the source. There is no exception. So the question is not just this. The question is why Jesus Christ was persecuted in the first place. And that is a very, I think this is a very interesting proposition which I am making, because our case is very much similar to that of the early Christianity. Now, I don't want to go into the detail of similarities of attitudes, but let me remind you that Jesus came with a message which is so humble, so loving, so modest, that it was impossible for anyone of his time to conceive it to be a danger. And as such, he should have been treated extremely kindly. If not agreed with, at least he should have been treated kindly. What did he say? He said, if somebody slaps you on one cheek, offer the other one. I mean, where was a threat to the society in that? Yet he was treated so intolerably viciously, so beastly, that people will not be satisfied until he was hanged to death on cross. That was the demand of the Jewish people around him. That was the verdict given by the governor of the Roman Empire. The question is why? My answer is very simple, and I believe it's quite understandable, that the truths, however mild they are potent with revolution. And this is the power of the truth which threatens them, not the message itself. They know the truth has dawned. They know that once the sun has started rising, nothing can stop it until or unless you turn the wheel of the earth back. So the attempt to destroy such messages is tantamount to turning the wheel back. It never succeeds, but it creates a lot of noise, a lot of trouble and sorrow. And that is all that happens. So the persecution of Ahmadiyyat is exactly for the same reasons and on the same style. We are a very small community. What is our message? Our message is Islam is not a religion of sword. Islam is a religion of love. Instead of going into a holy war in the most unholy way by raising swords against innocent people, what you should do is take the Holy Quran, its message, and deliver that message with understanding, with logic, and with love. What is wrong with that message? Yet it infuriated ulama to such violence that they would not sit in peace until Ahmadi homes were burnt with Ahmadis preferably within them, and their properties were looted and they were completely destroyed and always jeered and mocked at. This has resulted into this violence which you are referring to. Now why? If you ask them, the answer will always be they don't believe in holy war. So they should be given a taste of what holy war is, you know. There is no logic in this. But why are they so much afraid? Because all their attempts to arrest the passage of Ahmadiyyat have miserably failed for them. All their efforts have resulted into greater interest in Ahmadiyyat on the part of the public. And in fact, even after every such hostile movement, Ahmadiyyat has grown bigger than before. But they face a dilemma. If they leave Ahmadiyyat alone, it would spread. If they encounter it with hostility and cruelty, it would further spread. What can they do? In this situation, you begin to understand a very extremely wise observation of Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, better than ever before. He said, I am the cornerstone. Whomsoever I will fall, I'll break him. Whosoever falls upon me will be broken. So this is the dilemma of the enemies of truth. Whatever they do, it turns against them ultimately, but to attempt to suppress truth more violently gives them perhaps a sort of vicious satisfaction which they cannot enjoy by peacefully accepting the spread of truth. So this is a futile effort, but it is always done, carried out in the same style, same spirit throughout the religious history. Any other question? Yes, please. I wish a cordless microphone could be made available so that somebody could reach the guests instead of, putting them through the trouble of always walking up to the microphone. Where are the those who have managed things here? Huh?
Just wanted to be in charge.
You see, time is quite advanced. Why are you still living in 10 years past? Yes, please.
As a visit to Islamabad today for the very first time and knowing very little about the Ahmadi religion, I was most impressed when I went to your book display and on the wall noticing the map that you have of missionaries all over the world. I just wondered how you organise the missions, if they were like Christian missions, if they go out, or if there are missions through friends, as I can see here today, or through the mosques, that they may go out like other religions do, to homes and to people. I wonder if you could give me an answer to that question?
Of course.
Could I just ask you another one too?
Yes, please.
The bookstore, of course, has an enormous fund of books, as I can see, in every language in the world. And where would they possibly be able to be bought apart, perhaps from here? Would they go through a normal bookstore, a religious shop, or would you get them through a mosque or an agent?
Always, everything you have suggested is being pursued by the community, and we make our best efforts to make our books available in the normal stores, in specialized religious shops, and we also go to publication houses and try to convince them to take over the book at a large commission and then spread it as best as they possibly can for the sake of the money involved. And also we sell directly. And if somebody is still not interested, we even give free of cost.
That's good.
Because that is the ultimate goal of all efforts, that somebody somehow should read the message
That's correct.
The way
yes.
we want to deliver.
That's right.
Okay. And the first question was?
Mission work.
Yes, mission work. You know, Ahmadiyya community should be best understood in one single claim of the Ahmadiyya community, that the founder of the Ahmadiyya community is the promised Messiah. The Messiah who was promised to the latter days. This is the meaning of this term.
Yes, I understand the term.
But when you begin to understand it from Christian vantage point, your understanding will slightly differ, or sometimes considerably differ, from the understanding of a Muslim who believes in the same term slightly differently, or sometimes very powerfully, visibly differently. The Christians believe that the promised Messiah means a revisit by the same Christ who lived around 2000 years ago, a revisit from the heaven in the same person. The Muslims also believe in almost the same thing. They believe that Christ would revisit the earth in person, the same Christ who was attempted to be crucified. I'll explain why I'm spending some time on these differences. I'll come to your question in the end. Now, the Muslims differ after this agreement. And the difference is different with Christians after this part of agreement. They say, of course, Jesus Christ would revisit the earth himself. But this time when he comes, he would have become a Muslim. So he would land not in a Christian country, but in some Muslim country. It is like expecting a plane to land in some runway while it appears in some other or even a different airport. So this is just an explanation, an illustration of expectations. They do believe that Jesus would descend bodily in some Muslim country, declare to the world that he has got converted to Islam, and then his first enemies would be Christians, whom he would undertake to turn to Muslims. So although there is a very strong agreement in the beginning, the disagreement is almost as powerful. The Ahmadiyya understanding is neither here nor there. It's a completely different attitude. We believe that when those founders of religion or other holy people before us are referred to as going to come again, going to visit the world again, we find this mentioned in almost every part of the world, in almost every religion. There are scores of people who have been reported to have ascended to heaven, and with a promise to descend again. If they are right, the claimants, that they bodily ascended to heaven, so far they have been positively proved to be wrong regarding their bodily descent. None has descended so far bodily. So were they false people? Were the stories about them just legends? Where is the truth? The truth can only be understood with reference to an observation of Jesus Christ regarding such an issue. It was said in the Old Testament that Elijah or Elia ascended to heaven bodily sitting on his chariot. There was no confusion about that. And as such, he would revisit the earth again, sitting on the same chariot in the same body, before the coming of Christ. Until this happens, Christ would not come, because he would declare to the world that the days of Christ have come close, so open up your hearts and be ready to receive him. Now, when Jesus Christ did appear as true Christ from God, this was the joke of the town against Christians. They started jeering them and joking about this prophecy of the Old Testament, and they said, do you believe in the scriptures or not? This is the question. If you believe, then where is Elijah? Because he has not come, Christ has not come. It was as simple as that. When this matter was referred to Jesus Christ, he did not point bodily to John the Baptist because he was already dead by that time, but mentally pointing at him, he said, he was the Elijah who was predicted to descend from heaven. Believe it or not. What a profound message he gave. What a universal understanding of the same problem he disclosed. And this is exactly the Ahmadiyya attitude. We believe that those people who are reported to have ascended bodily to heaven, including Christ, peace be upon him, never ascended bodily to heaven, but they returned to their Lord. This was the meaning of their ascent, as against the allegations that they were earthly people and they would not return to their Lord. And their return also was spiritual return, a return of the message, a return of the style and attitude to the life problems of life. So we believe that when Jesus Christ himself promised a return to the earth, that is exactly what he had in mind, what he disclosed regarding the return of Elijah. And as such, we believe that the founder of the Ahmadiyya community has come as the fulfillment of that prophecy. Now, because this prophecy is metaphorically fulfilled, you still have to find similarities. Of course, he is not the same person. But how could he be called Christ if he has no similarity with Christ? So study Ahmadiyya movement in the light of this statement, and then you will find that in all important things, our attitude is similar to the behavior of the Muslims as against the Christians' attitude, in relation to the Christian attitude against the Jewish attitude. So put them in that bracket, Christian versus the Jews, Ahmadis versus the Orthodox Muslims, and the riddle will be solved. Our preaching would be the same as the preaching of early Christians. Is that right? Thank you. That I have already said. As the Christians have organized it, so we have done.
In view of adverse effects of Salman Rushdie affair and other world affairs in Islamic world, why Ahmadiyya did not state their views in the popular press and on radio, television, and so on, so public would more understand the stand and aims of Ahmadiyya?
You see, when this issue was hot, and red hot I should say, I appeared on many press interviews, widely attended, radio, television and press in England, in European countries, and always I projected the Ahmadiyya viewpoint very clearly. But none was reported, because they did not want it to be reported to the public. It will clarify the image of Islam. That is in which they were not interested. The press, radio, television was entirely devoted to such publicity as would add to the damage of image of Islam rather than to redress the damage. For instance, my answer in brief has always been, I have been speaking at length, of course, but in brief my answer has been that Islam strongly condemns all efforts to abuse others, particularly the Holy Prophet, but does not condemn them to death. That is in essence the Islamic attitude. Condemnation, all right, but not condemnation to death. This attitude was not reported. Those who, like Siddiqui here and many other violent spokesmen of Islam, were given large coverage, both on television, radio, and press. So this is not my fault that this has not happened.